Hi, today we are in Porter Township, Scioto County, Ohio, and we are visiting Mount Zion Cemetery. Now, the Ohio Genealogical Society's Book of Cemeteries, Big Blue Book, lists this as Batterson Cemetery or Old German Cemetery. So the current signage says Mount Zion, and as we walk up here, we'll see why it's referred to as German Cemetery. As many of those that are buried here, from what we found on Find a Grave and Family Search, had been from Germany or the area that is now Germany. So we have Sophia and John F. Greiver, large granite marker. You'll see there's a mixture. We haven't really found a rhyme or reason behind the burials. We do note that most of them are all early 1900s is the latest ones that we find, but most of them predate that. Here we have Jake Gabler, who died July 16th, 1876. We have another Gabler, and then here we have another 1902. These do appear to be broken out in family lots, or at least where families were buried together. They may not be lots. The Sherman family, and we'll see that spelling here. And then if we go towards the back of the cemetery, which will be an earlier headstone, we'll see a more anglicized version of Sherman. There's a pretty good mixture of marble and granite markers here. We haven't really found any field stones. For the most part, it does look like the footstones have been displaced or dislodged, and then they're placed alongside the tablet marker. A lot of these small markers like this do have slotted bases. Unfortunately, a lot of the slotted bases are spalled out, they're broken, so the stones are no longer upright. Most likely, the removal of the footstones was just for the practicality of mowing. Here we have the Bauer family. So we have May Florence and Louise Dolly Bauer. And then we have Edward G. Bauer here. We'll zoom in a little bit. Edward G. Bauer. And you can see that has a marble base. And this is Elizabeth Bauer. I'm sorry, Mauser. And then Friedrich Koch and Mary. Can't quite make that one out, but it looks like wife of Friedrich. So maybe one of Friedrich's first wives, or it could be an original headstone and then her name was placed on the one next with his. Here we have, so was interesting. We assumed that these were all held. So when we looked on Find a Grave, we did not see this large marble marker for John and Margaret Held. And I'll have to check, but that name, John Held, has some significance in Scioto County history. So when we get home, we'll check that out. We have Wilhelm here. He has a slotted base, and we're going to zoom in real quick. You're going to see something that maybe some of you all can answer for me. I have a theory, but you see all that pitting at the very bottom in the marble? All of the marble markers that are in slotted bases here, we come across that. They're all about the same height. They're at the bottom portion of the marker. Here we have Friedrich Reif. We thought this was held at first because just the R-E, then the back of the F kind of looks like a D, but we got the moving light around it and it was a lot more apparent. That's the only one in this cemetery we were able to find. This one leaning forward is the wife of Daniel Smith. Amanda, what was her first name? Christian. So this is Christian Smith, wife of Daniel Smith, and she was age 72 years and 24 days. Mm-hmm. Okay, and she died in, was it 1871?
Yes.
1871. Most of the time we would assume that that is just a child's burial, because here we have two children's burials and then an adult burial. So I guess don't ever assume just because that they're in proximity to a larger marker that they're the same family or that they are children. Here's another one of those. We'll zoom down, and if we look there, there's more of that pitting right at the soil level. And then if we turn around here, we'll turn. Amanda, you want to point that out? The pitting? Yeah.
Around here.
Yeah. So, my theory, and someone please correct me if I'm wrong, that it might have been done intentionally for the purpose of having the limestone mortar have more of a fix to the tablet. It's just my first thought. Don't know if it's right. I'm probably not. But here we have the very ornate marker for Charles H. Marting, son of William H. and C.E. Marting, who died May 28th, 1877, aged 17 years, 9 months, and 10 days. Have a nice epitaph here. This one would be a great candidate for D2. It's out here in the open and gets lots of sunlight. I might have to come back, check with the township trustees and see if that's something they would be interested in. Working our way back towards the end of the cemetery. We have a lot more of these marble markers. Another one, this one is for John A., son of A&S Crick, who died February 17th, 1870, age 20 days. It says he is not dead, and I can't make out that last line. But looks like we have the remains of a slotted base there, and more of that unusual pitting. Here we have the remains of a marker. We'll have to go back and check the photos on it. It's not going to show up great on camera, but looks like EVE, so maybe Eve. And when we come around to the side here, it looks like Hoffman. I don't want to assume that it's Hoffman because there's no record of Hoffman's being buried here, but we do sometimes see where it might be like Heave Mauser, or Eve, consort of Jacob Mauser, daughter of, and then have the parents' names, so her maiden surname. But it is online with all these other Cricks, but we don't see in the children's names, we see A and S Crick. We don't see an Eve. And another one, very unusual shape. Some of these are face down, which from the point of preservation has protected them a good bit from mower strikes and weathering. This one is another one that is a crick. It's about all we can make off. The polished surface of it's just deteriorated. You can see along the edge that it's sugaring. Don't know if that's the natural base or if it's fractured from this other portion of marble marker. We'll turn around here. We have, looks like Angeline, daughter of H and M Evans. And then born January the 1st, 1862, and died October 5th, 1862. And there we go again. We have more of that dimpling, I guess. Now, we talked about the Sherman name before, towards the entrance of the cemetery. Here we have infant son of H.A. and S. Sherman, who was born December 3rd, 1892 and died December 13th, 1892. So different spelling, possibly the same family. I do want to point out that we are completely surrounded by fields. If you were to look at this on Google Maps, you'll look it up as German Cemetery. This cemetery just kind of sits on the edge of the road in the middle of a field. And right now, the cemetery is almost completely surrounded by daffodils and bluebells or forget-me-nots. When we walk over to the other edge, we'll see those. But they completely surround this small cemetery. We'll come up here. Here we have a marble marker for Lena C. Held. And we'll have to look to see if we can make out her dates, but as it stands, I can't see them right now. Again, more of that dimpling right as it meets the slotted base. And this one would be, you come around to the side, it would be a good candidate to be remortared so that it was vertical. The base is nice and flat, but it could stand to be remortared. We come over here to where the back of the cemetery, there's a lot of daffodils. So see if there's any burials that have just been, over the years, they don't get mowed. The stuff in the peripheral tends to just be absorbed into its surrounding. Similar to if we were able to, but we can't, that group of trees over there, I'd be interested to see if there are any burials there, given its proximity to this cemetery. We have, this looks like a newer construction. You see the rounded top. And then they have lines that have come across it. It's cement. So somebody might have attempted to make a replacement marker. It could just be a border for a garden. But you don't typically see lines like that people will use to keep straight lines when they engrave names. Then we have large natural brownstone there in the corner, maybe the corner marker for this particular parcel. We come up through the weeds and across the daffodils, and we were able to locate a couple fieldstones. So we have footstones. So we have LCH here, given its proximity to Lena C. Held. That's most likely hers. And then next to it we have CJ. And if we look directly up, we have the headstone for Carlos Jenkins. And Carlos Jenkins was a fireman on the railroad that ran nearby here. We're not too far from Slocum Station, which was also, I think, Waite Station. But he died of typhoid fever and is buried next to his in-laws, but has a wonderful inscription that Amanda will read for us. That was put there at the request of his brother. Here we have more Bowers. That's William Bower, who was born in 1860 and died in 1881. Come over a little bit further this way. More daffodils. We have Carolyn Bower, who was born in 1841 and died in 1924. And J. William Bower, who was born in 1835, died in 1875. So as you can see, there's really not been any rhyme or reason other than family plots for this cemetery. Here we have, looks like Annie M. Sowers, S-O-W-E-R-S. And then if we look here, we have one that's broken and down. It's Peter Sowers. Have to get the flashlight out, but here we have another, to be able to read this one. But I can see that it's a Bower. And at the very back corner is that William Wendell Genheimer, or Genheimer. And whenever you have these vaulted obelisks, I always make sure I check all the sides, because just like that, if it's a shallow inscription, and on a sunny day you may not even see it. So here we're just using a little flashlight and shine a light down it. And here we have Sophia. His wife died March 22nd. It was like 1881, aged 68 years, 9 months. So just a little flashlight. But always check. We're going to make our way back up towards the entrance to the cemetery. Little establishing shot. If you come here, you could pull up across the road, but you'll be backing out into traffic, and there's a little bit of a rise, so probably not the safest. We just parked across the road in that big parking lot for that big red barn. And here we just want to do a quick shot of all the daffodils and bluebells. You know, I always see stuff like this and wonder, like, how long have they been propagating here? Last year we visited Ohio Cemetery, and a gentleman who owns the adjacent property has gratefully taken it upon himself, and at every burial he has transplanted and planted daffodils. So in the springtime they all come up, and even if you can't read the marker, you still know that someone was laid to rest there. But again, we are at Batterson, Germany, Old German or German Cemetery, and then Mount Zion Cemetery. So it's had several names through the years, and it can cause a lot of confusion, especially for people on Find a Grave. We end up with Batterson Cemetery, which isn't far from here. This is an older cemetery, so we end up with new burials here that are actually in New Batterson Cemetery, and then there's an Old Batterson Cemetery, which is on private property in a different township. And then there's also, not too far from here, Old Dutch Cemetery and Old St. Peter and Chains Old German Cemetery. So names, just speaking, they can get easily confused, especially if people are working from historical documents such as obituaries or death certificates. Those names change through the years, and you really almost have to be on the ground to see if there's a burial, to see if there were family members that were already buried there, to see if there were any burials that matched that date group. I know we ran into Old Germany Cemetery. It closed in the 1880s, and there are burials as recent as 2023 there, which just wasn't possible. So if you're out there doing Find a Grave, make sure you're in the right place, and do people a favor. Turn your location services on, add that GPS data. Makes it a lot easier to find markers for people doing research, and it adds to that genealogical base of knowledge, so that we're not getting cemeteries confused. But again, we're at Batterson, Germany, Mount Zion Cemetery in Porter Township, Scioto County, Ohio. And thank you all for coming out and being with us today.